Welcome into another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. This is Kickoff Eve. I don't know if that's an official holiday, but by God, right now it is. Kickoff Eve in the SEC. SEC games begin in 26 hours. It's been 26 weeks since I cover Ole Miss for a living at Rivals.com, RebelGrove.com. I wrote a column this morning, Chris. The last time that Ole Miss played a game in one of the three revenue sports was March the 11th. Ole Miss played a baseball game in Monroe, Louisiana, and they played against Georgia in the SEC basketball tournament in Nashville, the one night that there were games played before the tournament was canceled. Georgia beat Ole Miss, Arkansas beat Vanderbilt, and then the tournament was canceled the next morning. And subsequently, the sports world was canceled the next morning. So 6.5 months later, Ole Miss and Florida play at 11 tomorrow. Auburn and Kentucky play at 11 tomorrow. That starts the day, and then everybody gets into the action over the course of the day. Mississippi State at LSU. That game's at 2:30 on CBS. I should tell you that the Auburn-Kentucky game is on SEC Network. Florida and Ole Miss play on ESPN. Georgia and Arkansas play at 3 o'clock Central Time. They're in Fayetteville. That game can be seen on the SEC Network. And then at night, 3 games at night, Alabama at Missouri. That game on ESPN. It kicks off at 6 p.m. Tennessee and South Carolina play at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. That game in Columbia, South Carolina, can be seen on the SEC Network. And then Vanderbilt and Texas A&M kick off at the same time. They're in College Station. That game 6:30 Central Time on the SEC Network alternate channel. Chris, I got so excited about football being tomorrow, I forgot to even say hello and welcome you into the show. So welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing good. You know, it's interesting because I've got my sheet of the games, and what I do is I break them off in the time slots as I will do this. This is probably maybe not great, but I will. There you go. You see that? That is the 6 TVs in the Landry Football Lab.
How about that?
They're all off right now, but they will be humming tomorrow as if I can get myself back in the picture again. Doing technical stuff live is always intriguing. So as I was doing it, I just realized something. You just told me something that, I mean, I have it down and I just didn't pay much attention to it. But in my opinion, and we talked about it on Tuesday, the 2 best games of the week in the SEC, or at least I think the 2 best matchups. We don't know if it's going to be the best games. Attaboy to the SEC Network. Both of them are on the SEC Network. So what I do is I kind of block them off time-wise, and I number them, monitor 1, 2, 3, and the others can be taped. I can tape 2 other games. And so I'm just looking at them thinking, man, Georgia, Arkansas is on the SEC Network as well. But, you know, Alabama, Missouri, don't anticipate that being a good game. I get it, the Alabama draw. LSU, I guess, the national champion from last year.
Out of curiosity,
that's a curiosity, CBS. But I don't know how often we can say that the SEC Network is going to have the 2 best games of the week. But when you're having SEC versus SEC, it's a little bit better. It's a little bit easier now, is it? Because, you know, you don't have the SEC game against, you know, Sisters of the Poor U.
Yep.
That they cover here. I have just totally messed up the video here. So no, it's going to be a fun week. And what is great about the SEC coming in is that it gives more oomph to the schedule, because in watching the games, I've noticed that monitors 4, 5, and 6, there weren't as compelling a games the first couple of weeks, and now you keep those other conferences in, and now you add the SEC, and boy, we'll have the Big Ten coming around in a couple of weeks, and the Mountain West, and Neil.
It's a miracle, Chris.
We got Pac-12 football at some point. It's right before, you know, you just go out and you shop for your Thanksgiving turkey and sit down for the start of Pac-12 football. We're going to look back. I hope we look back because I sure as hell don't hope we ever have to go through this again. We look back and say, remember the year 2020 when the football season didn't start in the Pac-12 until November? The SEC, I can remember back then, you're telling your grandkids on your knee, hey, because I sure as heck hope we don't have this happen again. Of course, this is all things considered, what's going on in the country, not that big of a deal. But to us, to me, it certainly is. It's just kind of thrown my body clock from a calendar standpoint. You know, you get your body clock where you don't know when to sleep and go to bed. Well, my calendar clock for the first time, it is off because my entire life has been built around football season. Then you have kind of recruiting season and NFL draft season, and we have spring practice and OTAs and mini camps and preparation for training camp and fall practice and football season, and you do the whole thing again. I don't know what the heck's going on. They tell me the NBA Finals is on. I can't wait till that's over. I mean, it's just getting ready to get there.
Not quite.
I mean, it's just not. Yeah, it's just not. The Masters coming up. It's all is not right in the world with the schedule. But I seriously am excited about the games, and we've got some good games. You know, other than the SEC games, but we've got some intriguing matchups and some teams that we're looking forward. Even in some of the matchups that may not be as compelling.
Hold that thought, because we're going to get back to that in a second. I want to go here, though. I'm in too good of a mood to dive into the politics of it all. Why November? Whatever. It looks like one thing is at least this is admitting that the whole we're going to play in the spring was horse crap from day one.
Yes.
We got that out of the way.
Dangling a carrot.
Yes. All right. Number two, we could get into the politics. I'm in too good of a mood. I don't want to. Forget it.
Good.
Now, here's my question, though. This is legitimate. When the Big Ten starts, and then I guess, a week later, the Pac-12 starts, and maybe the Mountain West starts, and maybe the MAC starts. I don't know, whoever. Everybody who starts late. The Pac-12 is going to play 7 games. Just for kicks and giggles, Chris, let's say Oregon's the best team in the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
And Oregon goes 7-0. And wins the Pac-12 championship over whoever you want them to beat. I'll let you have creative license. Is that going to be enough to get into a playoff if the playoff stays at 4 teams?
For me,
yeah,
because so much of it is how they look on film. I am a film guy. I'm not we look at the stats. The stats are the byproduct of how good you are relative to who you play. So without the benefit of having to watch those 7 games and see how they look, I would say this. It's going to be difficult. But what are the other options? So would I give the advantage to Clemson, Alabama, just to throw it out? They are in a good position because they're going to play more games. And I would think, I hate the eyeball test, but when you study them on tape, I would think that they're going to be better. But
Nick Saban said the other day that he thinks this season more than any other, it's going to be subjective more than it will be analytical.
Yes. And I mean, to me, as a film guy, and listen, analytics have been around for a long time. They just never called it analytics. It's about football stuff. But some of the analytics that they use, to me, are not really apropos to the whole process. But be that as it may, different conversation. I don't think you can dismiss it. Now, there are people that are going to say, and maybe a lot of people that listen to this podcast, it is SEC football and beyond, as we all know, that, no, Pac-12 doesn't deserve to be there. Absolutely not. I don't dismiss anybody. Your film will dictate to you how good you are as a player, as a team, as a coach, as a scheme. That is your resume. It's going to be difficult because they're going to have to be clean. They're going to have to be dominant. They're not going to have the benefit. We miss. I don't want to be negative, but we now miss Oregon, Ohio State. How good of a game that would have been the early part of the season. Okay, get over it, Chris. It's over. It's done. But how good will this Oregon team look compared to a 1-loss Oklahoma? I mean, I think that's a fair discussion. Now,
a one-loss Georgia, a one-loss Florida.
Yeah, a one-loss Georgia, one-loss Florida will certainly have a tougher road. So I'm going to do something that is unfair, but to answer the question as best as I can today, I would say that if Georgia or Florida has one loss, that's going to be pretty impressive, at least as a resume. A one-loss Oklahoma or a one-loss Texas, which I don't see them as that type of team. I think Oregon is more talented than Texas and better personally. But again, the film is going to decide that. I think you could have that argument. Now, you're going to have an argument of, but they played more games. That's going to be the subjective argument that we're discussing. Oh, they got one loss, but they played 3 more games. I think it's going to be about who you beat, and then certainly who you lost to. The quality of the teams that you played, not so much is how many. So let's just take Notre Dame. Their game gets canceled against Wake Forest. That's not going to affect Notre Dame if they beat Clemson, Neil. Certainly if they beat them twice. No one's going to say, you beat Clemson twice, but you didn't play Wake Forest. You don't deserve to be in. However, if Notre Dame Clemson gets canceled, then that's a different situation. So maybe they've played more games, but, and I'm talking about if it came down to whether Notre Dame would deserve to be considered for the second or team of the ACC or first if something happens to Clemson. So I think we're going to have to wait. And anybody that's absolutely not, well, then that's just being closed-minded in my view. But I will say this. There's no margin for error. I mean, I think when you get to 6 or 5 games, it becomes ridiculous, to even know because, but I think it does matter what games you lose on your schedule. If a game gets canceled, you're Oregon and it's against a very weak team, then that's going to be different than if you get canceled against a really good one. So I think it's going to be difficult, but I wouldn't rule out an unbeaten Pac-12 team. And let's call it like it is, particularly if it's Oregon, because they're perceived to be the best. They're very talented. But I think it's a long shot. I think Ohio State's chances are much better. Ohio State goes 7-0. They get a game canceled. Neil, the perception of them is that they're going to look better. And that's a big part of it, right or wrong.
Let me add this, because we don't know what bowl games are going to happen. If bowl games are going to happen, I don't know. We'll see. Is there any thought in your mind that in this one-off year where stuff is happening sort of on the fly, is there any chance that the college football playoff people go, okay, you know what? We're basically fundamentally against it. But in this one year where it's impossible for us to truly judge because we didn't get, Georgia, Oklahoma, or Ohio State, Oregon, or you didn't even get the Ole Miss Baylor kind of games that you would have gotten where neither one of those teams are national title contenders, don't get me wrong, but where you get a grasp for SEC versus Big 12. You don't get Clemson, I guess it was Auburn, North Carolina. You don't get that game to go, hey, Auburn's the 3rd best team in the SEC, North Carolina's the 4th best team in the ACC, and here's what that looked like. You know where I'm going. Is there a chance that the committee goes, you know what, screw it, let's go to 8 teams?
Oh, Neil. That would make perfect sense. So absolutely not.
Way too logical.
No, yeah. Here's the thing. It is, and it's like the second time this week somebody asked me that, and it's a great point. And never has there been a year where it would make some sense because you don't have enough of a sample size to really determine it. So let's play more games. And the only way to do it, because we had to back everybody's schedule up, or most people's schedule up, and we've got maybe displaced games. Let's play more games, now that things are better, hopefully, and we'll play them in the playoffs. I think 2 things. First of all, they have given no indication that they would consider that. In fact, they have been adamant that they won't do that. I think if you're asking me my judgment of what I think they'll do, I think they're so afraid to go down that path and say, man, this worked really good. And it even spurs the momentum of let's have a playoff. I don't think it. I think what they're going to say, no, we've got a committee. We've got football people. We've got 12 experts in the room, and we're going to pick the 4 best teams. And we can do that. We understand it's going to be a little bit more subjective this year. Somebody may play 7. Somebody may play 9. Somebody may be. That's just it. I think that's going to be the spin. That's going to be the reality. I don't think it's going to happen. However, it's 2020, Neil, and if there is real chaos, so let me throw the chaos scenario. What if everybody, and I'm just saying that it won't happen this way, what if everybody has 2 games, 3 games? Okay. Then you got 5 games for one team, 8 games for another. Then everybody looks, 6. I mean, what if, then like somebody said, well, what if Alabama's 7-1 and Georgia 7-1, and then, Ohio State's, 6-1. I mean, it looked then though it would fall into the category of we still know the 4 best. We only played 8 games. But what if you have real chaos to where you're having a hard time where a lot of people's schedules are just affected? I wouldn't rule it out because it is 2020, but I can tell you they'd be kicking and screaming doing it. I just don't think they want to do it. It makes all the sense in the world, though.
Yeah, I just think it's this one crazy year where the Pac-12 starting in November, for example. The Big Ten is starting at the end of October. For anybody to pretend like there's a blueprint for this, give me a break. I don't know, and it might not matter, but if everybody gets the games in. It's worth noting. All right, let's talk some SEC. People want to hear SEC. If you didn't hear our Tuesday show, we broke down all of the games pretty thoroughly. But I know people have lives, and sometimes you get busy, and we're the second priority on your list, and you just never quite get there. So you can go find those shows, by the way, at the Oxford Exxon podcast feed. It's there. It's at Chris Landry's podcast feed. So you can find that podcast if you want to hear it. Maybe you're driving someplace tomorrow morning or later today to get to an SEC game if you're one of the lucky ones that has tickets. All right, let's just kind of jump around a little, Chris. We'll talk about the early games first. Kentucky at Auburn, Florida at Ole Miss, Mississippi State at LSU. And I'll get your picks at the end. Get your picks at the end of the show. What are you looking for? Do it however you want to, those 3 games. Kentucky at Auburn, Florida at Ole Miss, Mississippi State at LSU. To me, all 3 of those games quite intriguing. Kentucky's interesting. I think Auburn's got a good team. I think Auburn's got a very good defense. Bo Nix back for a sophomore year. I understand why ESPN picked the Ole Miss game over that game because you get the Gators, they're a draw, and you get Lane Kiffin's first game at Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin is a national curiosity, if nothing else. And then Mississippi State at LSU. You get Mike Leach's first game at Mississippi State, and you get the absolute curiosity that is the LSU Tigers, a team that won everything last year that one can win in a college football season. They won all of it. But most of what won it all is gone. And so there's going to be a new quarterback, a new coordinator, another new coordinator, new staff, new this, new that. New is interesting. So those 3 games, or you can see why CBS picked the LSU game, and you can see why ESPN took Ole Miss. And then the Auburn, as you mentioned, Auburn, Kentucky, of those 3 games might end up being the most competitive, and it's on the SEC network. What sticks out about those 3 to you?
Well, I think in Florida Ole Miss, it's wanting to see this Ole Miss offense against this Florida defense. Florida defense is replacing some folks, but they're still very talented. Todd Grantham is going to want to coming off the bus, he likes to be aggressive. I want to see Ole Miss. I know, and you cover this very well. I think Lane has been concerned throughout his practices about consistency at quarterback, decision-making, accuracy, those things I want to see. Can they protect the football? Clearly, Ole Miss has got to play clean plus make some big plays. They've got to be able to run it. I am most specifically interested in how John Rice Plumlee is used, when, where, package and sets. I just think that it it really, to me, I could see him not being the quarterback, but I can't see him not being on the field as much as possible, because I think that that is most intriguing to me. On the other side, we're going to see a Florida offense that has a chance to be really good. And I'm curious to see, Ole Miss, how they're able to hang in there, what they're able to do. So that's most intriguing in terms of Auburn, Kentucky. I mentioned this a little bit Tuesday, but I think it bears repeating. I think the whole key in this game for Kentucky, first of all, offensively, is really good offensive line. I think they've got 3 NFL prospects on the offensive line, one of the best centers in the country. I think they have the ability to run the football, control the line of scrimmage pretty well. I would expect Auburn to play a lot of 8-man fronts and to try to force the ball in the air. How well will Kentucky be able to get them out of that look? That's key. I think the biggest intrigue in that game, though, is on the other side of the ball, because it's schematics in my mind. All right, how do you get Kentucky misaligned? In addition to being really good at the line of scrimmage, defensively, they're very gap sound. They line up very well. They stem their fronts, a lot of pre-snap movements, and they're really good. They're rarely out of position. Well, the one thing that I think Auburn does pretty well, have done pretty well in the past, is work some up-tempo. I think that's what you have to do against Kentucky. I think you have to run tempo so that it's hard to get them misaligned, so you need to get the ball snapped before they can get lined up or stem their front or make any adjustment. So Chad likes to run some tempo with the pass game. Gus likes to run the tempo with the run game. Now, if you go back to the Auburn game, the Auburn-Oregon game last year, one of the things that hurt Auburn in that game, and Oregon probably should have won that game. They kind of blew that game. Auburn was not able to run their tempo like they want, Neil, because Bo Nix was, they weren't as comfortable. He wasn't as comfortable, so they had to slow it down, get him, so now how much better is he going to be able to run it? I think a lot, and I think that's going to be key. In the Mississippi, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, if you're Kentucky and you're getting ready for Auburn offensively this last few weeks, are you studying more of Chad Morris, or are you studying a lot of Gus Malzahn, or are you trying to figure out sort of how they're going, or are they one and the same?
No, I think you have to study both. They have a lot of the principles. They come from the same ilk, but Chad, you study the pass game of Chad and the run game of Gus, and I think you have to be prepared for both. So you got to study both, and I know they have. That's just kind of what you do.
You studying it as a coach and compressing it to something that can be taught effectively to your players are two different things.
Yes. What I think the biggest. Okay, so how does Kentucky deal with that? You're a Kentucky fan. All right, Chris, how do we deal with the tempo? Well, one thing, it's going to be conditioning, because you won't have as much to be able to come in and out of the game. You won't be able to substitute as much. But what you're going to have to do is create a lot of hand signals where you're making quick decisions on the field with your players, with some, you've got to make quicker calls from the sideline and get them quicker to the players. They're going to have to get lined up quicker if they go the tempo that I expect them to do. If they don't, well, then that's okay. You've prepared for something. It's kind of like, you don't know if you're going to get asked that question on the test, but you better darn know it, because you might get. You better be prepared for that question come Saturday. And you've got to be able to get lined up without getting the extra time. And you have to say, what we're going to do, we're going to play more of a reduced front, and then we're going to bring our guys up, and we're going to force them to throw it. It's probably what they're going to do until Auburn throws them out of that look, and then I think that they're going to have to adjust it accordingly. But the adjustments are going to have to be made quicker and on the field, and you're going to have to be able to hold up. I mean, I think it's going to be that much more important for Kentucky's offense to help their defense by being able to control the football, ball control, because if they have to go up tempo on defense, and Neil, they're on the field for a lot of snaps, this is where the Auburn game could just take this game and go the other way. This game has to be a half-court game, to use a basketball analogy, for Kentucky to win, and Auburn wants to be a little bit more paced, and That is going to determine whether this game is close and goes into the fourth quarter, or if it's a blowout. If it's a blowout, it's Auburn blowing out Kentucky because it's fast-paced. But there's no way really Kentucky's going to blow out Auburn unless Auburn just puts the ball on the ground 4 times and loses a turnover battle on -4.
We're going to move on, but can Kentucky win this game?
Yes, they can. Absolutely, they can. They can win it at the line of scrimmage, and they're going to have to force some mistakes by Auburn. But they're going to need a little help, and they're going to have to force some of those mistakes, and they're going to have to control the clock and the ball on offense.
I can hear the Ole Miss fans yelling at me for not asking this question, so I'll ask it of you real quick, and then we'll go to LSU and get to the other games too. Is there a scenario where Ole Miss beats Florida, or is that just too much to ask?
I see it as too much to ask. I don't think Ole Miss can beat Florida. I think Florida would have to lose it. So gotcha. I think a scenario Kentucky can beat Auburn. Yeah, you say, well, Auburn's going to have to play. Yeah, but Kentucky can hang. I think that the bonus as a watcher of this game, as a consumer of this game, I'm hoping that it's into the fourth quarter, at least one possession, no more than that, and there's a chance because there's always that spot. I think if you're Ole Miss, you're going to have to flip the field in the kicking game. You're going to have to win the explosive game battle, no doubt about that. And, Florida is just going to have to misfire a little bit on offense. Third down.
On the field when Florida beats Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it goes down to. All right, LSU, Mississippi State. Interesting game. Like I said, it's. I think LSU wins. I think LSU wins big, just because LSU has so much talent. But man, there is so much turnover that I can't help but wonder. Throwing in no spring, a weird summer, COVID, weird preseason. I can't help but wonder, man, is there any chance? And then Tiger Stadium is going to be quieter than it normally is. It's not going to have the normal, almost a festival feel that Tiger Stadium has. My favorite place in the league. I love it. But it's not going to feel like Tiger Stadium.
No.
And then you've got the added dimension of Mississippi State looking completely different, I presume, than it looked under Dan Mullen, than it looked under Joe Moorhead. There's a lot of just if here. You know what I mean?
There is. I think there's a bigger transition with Mississippi State. I think the lack of a spring hurts Mississippi State more because the fundamental part of what LSU is going to do is going to be the same. They're going to run it more, I think, and not put the game in Miles Brennan's hands like they did in Joe Burrow's hands, meaning Miles won't be as proficient as setting the protections. So much of what Joe Burrow did last year was, the teams that have success against really good offenses, what you do is you try to bring pressure and you break down protections so that they can't put as many guys out on routes. Well, it didn't work against LSU because Burrow became so proficient at setting the protections and getting the ball out quickly, they could put 5 guys out on routes, and good luck trying to cover the 4th and 5th guy. And you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a check down. It was tough. Now, the biggest thing I'm looking for is Eric Gilbert. Eric Gilbert's the true freshman tight end from Georgia that I went to a couple of practices, Neil, was asked to go, and one scrimmage, actually, in a practice. This kid's special. This kid's, we'll see how this guy has got elite ability. So they're going to work the tight end a little bit more. They're going to run the football a little bit more. And I think they're going to be more similar, but not – they won't look the same, but the offense will be fundamentally the same with Scott Linehan making the adjustments to what they've done in the past as opposed to, he'll bring in some of his own wrinkles. Whereas at Mississippi State, you're talking about a completely different system. So I'm very curious to see Mike, who tends to be very stubborn. They've got one of the best backs in the league. I think one of the best backs in the country, Colin Hill. So I think that they should be able to run the football very effectively. We'll see what they do. They don't run a lot of plays, but they really spend a lot of time perfecting those routes and those plays. And they didn't have as much time to do it. So I just think this is now. The other thing is, how aggressive will Bo Pelini get I think you got to be really careful with those huge line splits. It's inviting to want to rush the quarterback. They do that on purpose. It's their version of a screen game don't get caught up into that. Mush rush and make sure that you defend the run because they're going to spring the run on you with those used line splits. And if you get upfield and you penetrate the gap, then you're just going to create an alley, and that's a big run play. So play contain, that's not how Bo likes to play it, but he's going to have to show discipline, and the defense is going to have to show discipline because this is a route in the making if LSU plays it correctly, but there'll be some wrinkles that everyone's going to have to adjust to, and LSU gets the first crack at it.
All right, Georgia and Arkansas, 3 o'clock, SEC Network. Chad Morris gone from Arkansas. Sam Pittman, his first game there. He was on the Georgia staff the last few years. He and Kirby Smart, very good friends, close relationship there. This is a Georgia team that has a ton of talent, Chris. Breaking in a new quarterback. Jake Fromm's gone. There's not a lot of question marks on this Georgia team, but the one or two that are there are pretty big ones. What do you expect on Saturday?
I expect the bloodletting, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a dominant performance. I think it'll be at the line of scrimmage. I think this Georgia defense is going to show its will and might. I think the running game is going to show a distinct advantage. I think the only intrigue for me would be how much they do or how little that they do with the passing game. I mean, how the quarterback situation is going to be fun to watch. Who plays, who starts, I think it's going to be Dwan Mathis, but, I don't know. We'll see if JT. I'm curious to see how much they show or how much they work is the best way to put it with their passing game. But they're not going to need it here, but they may need the reps here, if you know what I mean. So that's the only thing, and I'm just looking and hoping that maybe Arkansas can keep it close and make it interesting. No, I think this is as big of a blowout as we could see this weekend.
All right, so we'll get into the evening games now, and getting rid of that one. Sorry. So the evening games, you got Alabama at Missouri. This game is at 6 p.m. on ESPN. Tennessee at South Carolina, 6:30. SEC Network, that's Central Time, 7:30 Eastern. Vanderbilt at Texas A&M. That game at 6:30 on the SEC Network alternate channel. Obviously, it's Elijah Drinkwitz's first game there at Missouri. Quite the
he's gonna need a drink.
Yeah, he's gonna need
maybe at halftime, maybe at pregame when he comes out of pregame. Can I have a stiff drink after watching those guys?
Woo! And then we talked about South Carolina, Tennessee, which to me is the game that I'm really looking forward to watching because it's got some. There's a lot there, and then Vanderbilt A&M just could get really ugly. Before we dive into Tennessee and South Carolina, what are you looking for with Alabama, and then in that Texas A&M Vanderbilt game, what are you looking for from the Aggies in terms of moving forward? Obviously, they're going to beat Vanderbilt, but what do you want to see from them in terms of setting themselves up for future success?
To me, A&M, confidence game for Kellen Mond. Get the passing game going a little bit, get some rhythm there. Jimbo always likes to establish the run. They'll be able to do that effectively here. I don't know that we're going to learn a whole lot from them here. So if it's sloppy, it's not necessarily could be first game. If they blow them out, it's Vanderbilt. I mean, it's just I think that we're going to learn a little bit more piece by piece with Vanderbilt. But I think it's a rhythm game. It's a pace. It's about getting. To me, it's about who's going to step up at receiver. Who's going to be, consistent playmakers. And I think that's what I'm looking for. Vanderbilt I don't see a win on their schedule. I just don't see one at all. I mean, that would be a COVID win is the only way. This is a bad-looking football team. They do not have the talent like they've had in the past when they still weren't very good. When they've had a running back, when they've had a receiver, when they've had a tight end, when they've had a couple of players on defense, they're just so limited. This is going to be tough. For Alabama, first of all, for Missouri, I think that their offensive line is trying to rework things, and that's not good against this defensive front.
No.
Dylan Moses has been outstanding, and this is going to be a tough game for them. I think you're going to see maybe certainly one of the best offensive lines in the country. And I think you're going to see Alabama's kind of return to running the football, power football, but I think they're going to work the pass game. I think it's going to be more run to set up the pass than pass to set up the run. Now, with that said,
I think
I do too.
Yeah.
Well, and then people have asked me, and people asked me in Tuscaloosa radio on Wednesday, well, how surprised? There was no surprise. There was no way the freshman was going to be in a position to get enough reps to earn that job. Not now. Now, as we get into week 6 or 8, depending on the health and the play of Mac Jones, that's a different conversation. There was no decision to be made. Mac knows the offense. Mac knows where to go with the football. This is going to be, I think, a return to what we consider Alabama. Power run game. And when people overload the box, they're going to throw it and throw it effectively. They've got good receivers. Look, I get it. They felt like they had to outscore people last year. Their defense was banged up, and they had to, and they had 4 great receivers. Let's go out and throw it, and let's score 35, 40 points and try to but that doesn't work at the highest level if you not able to get off the field defensively. Now what you're going to see is a better defense that's played a lot of young guys last year that are now going to be in better position to be successful and going to be on the field less, I would think, because I think the offense is going to play more ball control, and they'll get points out of the passing game, but they're going to win games because of the running game and the defense. That's what I think. I think that's what we see this week, and I think that's what we see this season with Alabama.
All right, so the one that I'm looking forward to, I'm going to be live streaming tomorrow from 9 in the morning until, I would guess, around 6 o'clock tomorrow night. And then I'm going to finish up. I'm going to pour something into a glass, and I'm going to watch Tennessee and South Carolina with a lot of interest. I expect it to be an entertaining game. I expect it to be a competitive game. You might disagree and say, Neil, you're an idiot. Feel free. You won't be the first person today. But I think this is a fun game. Tennessee, as of this moment, doesn't know whether Cade Mays is going to be eligible. South Carolina's got a new quarterback. We talked about that on Tuesday. There's a lot here. Will Muschamp, been with this program for a while. Jeremy Pruitt's been with this program for a while. Unlike a lot of the other games we've talked about where there's a lot of newness and all that stuff, there's a lot of carryover for these two programs going into this game. They know each other. They play each other every year. I'm fascinated.
I am as well. Storylines in the game that I'm looking forward to. Mike Bowl, South Carolina's new offensive coordinator, / Colin Hill, his quarterback, came over from Colorado State. Very knowledgeable about this offense. Is like a coach on the field. How is that going to translate for him? I think it's certainly going to help him from a direction standpoint. How effective will they be in the passing game? Shi Smith is still around, but they've lost a lot of pieces. Brian Edwards, by the way, playing pretty good with the Raiders. Miss him. This Tennessee secondary is pretty good. So are they going to get enough out of the passing game is what I'm curious to see. All right. On the other side, what has Tennessee got in Garantano? What will they get this year in Garantano? He's got some confidence. He's tough. I think the way they're going to play it is their offensive line is Tennessee's strength. It's the best and deepest group that they've had in a while. And you mentioned Cade Mays. Even without that, they're pretty good. With him, they're outstanding. So I think they've got an edge there. And I'm curious to see South Carolina will play a loaded front, and I think they're going to force Garantano to beat them. And that maybe is going to be the key of whether Tennessee can get some early points. The other thing is, can South Carolina please finally get a running game? They've just not been able to get, for all the good recruiting and the job, they've just not been able to develop the running game. And that just doesn't make sense with me when you put the head coach with his philosophy, his defensive prowess, and his recruiting skills. Why they haven't cracked that nut is just one of the mysteries. And we're not talking about a guy who's in his second year there. I think the key thing, some key guys, Eric Gray's special. Henry To'oto is really special. I think Bryce Thompson could step out and have a great game at corner and a great season at corner. On South Carolina, I mentioned Hill. Is Kevin Harris that running back that could be that guy? Zach Pickens, remember him of signing day. He's going to take over for Javon Kinlaw. Tough sledding there. Mukama in the secondary is really good player. Marshawn Lord's loss is big, and it hurts him, South Carolina in the run game. So I think it's going to be a real intriguing game. There's not a whole lot that separates it. I expect it to be a 3-4 point type of game. I think Tennessee's a little bit better overall, but South Carolina's at home, and I agree with it. I think it's the most intriguing game. If both teams play their best, this is a really close game. Both teams play their best in Kentucky, Auburn. Auburn wins by 10. But, I don't know how that's going to play out. And there could be a close game that it always is. And a game that, I didn't expect that, and it's the fourth quarter. And this one should be close in the fourth quarter if both teams play up to their capabilities. Maybe not their best, but both play equally on a scale.
All right, in a few minutes, we'll get your picks against the spread. I know that a lot of people out there want to know what you think. They're trying to make some money. Before we do that, let us make a little money and tell you this podcast is brought to you by Jupiter Security Systems. They're based in Madison, Mississippi. Jupiter Security Systems provide your business with a help desk, allowing you to get software at a much cheaper price than you would pay going directly to Microsoft or the different cybersecurity services. Jupiter Security Systems offers businesses the full Microsoft 365 suite, email spam protection, and they monitor their workstations and servers. Excuse me. No, Jupiter does not see your data, by the way, but they'll know if malicious applications get installed on your computers. Jupiter can set up remote monitoring on a computer regardless of the location, so don't spend money on getting your employees new laptops to work remotely. Let Jupiter monitor their home computers, protect your data wherever you choose to work. Jupiter Security Systems offers cybersecurity and monitoring. It's ADT for your computer systems and data, and it's very affordable with a flat price, no hidden add-ons. For more information, call Eric, 601-519-9583, or email info@jupitersecurity.net, or visit jupitersecurity.net. All right, Chris, there are some other games out there in the college football world this weekend that might be interesting a little later in the year. We've talked about the SEC games. There are some games in other leagues that are interesting. Louisville and Pittsburgh play one another. That game is at
Pittsburgh.
It's at Pittsburgh. I'm trying to see a time for it. It's at 11 a.m.
11 a.m. Central. Yes.
That's one. Iowa State TCU.
Yes.
Is one at 12:30. You've got West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Army, Cincinnati. You've got Florida State, Miami. That game at 6:30. NC State, Virginia Tech. That game is at 7. So there are some other games out there that probably aren't going to impact the national titles perspective, but they might impact how different leagues are viewed.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. A lot of people are focusing on, the Miami-Florida State game. It's going to get the primetime treatment. It's a chance for Miami to make a statement. They're playing better. Florida State is struggling, and certainly with Mike Norvell, anything other than a beatdown will be considered disappointment by Miami. And, the one thing is Miami's played good ball, disciplined ball, but they tend to waver from that at times. And if they do that, Florida State will certainly be motivated and play hard in this game. I don't know how well, but that's going to be intriguing. And maybe the most competitive ACC game is the Louisville-Pitt game that you mentioned. Pitt's got a really good defense. Pat Narducci's got a really solid defense. They can run the football well. Louisville lost to Miami, but they've got as good a quarterback, wide receiver, running back combination in the country, and certainly in the ACC. And Clemson is still in the ACC. That's pretty impressive. That's special when you can say, you know what, I'll take our quarterback, our running back, and our receiver, our top one, and put them up against Clemson. And you know what? You don't laugh at it. That's pretty impressive. Do they have enough? And can they bounce back? I think that's going to be intriguing. For the Big 12, who's the third best team in the Big 12? I mean, I think we're going to begin to – I would give them a nod right now. I think we're going to start to find out this week. Playing good defense against Tulsa is a little bit different than playing it against West Virginia. This is not the old West Virginia. Neil Brown's not quite got his offense where it needs to be, but it's going to be a little bit more challenging than Tulsa. That's going to be interesting. Obviously, Oklahoma State, the game last week, losing their starting quarterback. It's going to be a little bit different. Oklahoma State's a little bit more run-focused, maybe a little bit more focused on the defense. Jim Knowles has come over from Duke. Again, we'll see. I think they're the best candidate to be the third best team. But Iowa State, people have kind of thrown dirt on because they lost to ULL. TCU, those two teams play really intriguing game. And I think the winner there will have something to say about, all right, who truly is the third best team in the Big 12. So I think it's really an intriguing week. You mentioned Army Cincinnati. I think the most talented group of 5 team in the country is Cincinnati. You can make the case for Central Florida. Central Florida has a little bit more overall speed. I think Cincinnati's a little bit better, but this is a tough game. You know what Army brings to the table. You know the discipline, the focus, having to defend that triple option is going to be quite the challenge. So that is really, really intriguing to watch. So, you mentioned it. Georgia Tech maybe gets back on track against Syracuse. Texas Tech has just been a mess to this point. Kansas State upset Oklahoma last year. Something tells me they will be remembered in Norman, and it'll be a little different this year.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
That's and by the way, I mean Duke's not looking right now. I think the program's starting to wither away a little bit in Durham now with Cut. Now, we'll see, but not really like the quarterback, but I'm not real comfortable with where things are going there. We'll see if that changes. And then I'm curious to see, but Virginia Tech play, NC State. Virginia Tech still hasn't played yet. They've missed more games than anybody other than Houston. Houston's had 5 games canceled thus far. But so we got, I think, we're deep enough into the ACC and the Big 12 where we've got some compelling matchups to go along with a couple of group of 5 matchups as well as the SEC games.
Yeah, it's some really fun games. Let me ask you about Luke Fickell real fast because we're going to touch on the NFL real quick, and then I'm going to get your picks, and then we're going to bid each other adieu for the weekend and get ready for some football. Can Fickell wait for a Big Ten job of his choosing for Notre Dame to open up? I mean, is he that much of a hot commodity?
Yeah. Well, he turned down Michigan State, or the whole not officially offered, but that's who they went after before they went to Mel Tucker. So yes, I think he would have maybe considered that job had the timing been different and circumstances been different. Obviously, Michigan State has had a lot of off the field stuff and a lot of administrative stuff that I think the timing and that concern turned him off a little bit. But I think he, let's say we wouldn't have had all that off the field stuff. I think he would have been ripe to go in and replace Mark D'Antonio and would have been a smooth transition. Yes, I think he can get a Michigan State type job, and again, had it if he wanted it, and that was the turnoff and why he didn't take it.
All right, the NFL this weekend. We'll probably do this every week, but next week will be, like, as Chris and I were talking about, it's going to be a walk in the park. Tuesday, we're going to break down the SEC games from the weekend before. On Friday, we'll have games to break down in detail. This week, obviously, because there were no games last weekend, we've pretty much done that for you. Don't forget, you can go to LandryFootball.com and get as much depth as you want on every one of these SEC games. You can, Chris, 2,000 words on each game. I mean, there's a lot there.
Yeah, we take it different angles. So college and NFL, if you're looking at it at a fantasy angle or a gambling angle or just a personnel angle, a schematic, we break it all down, tell you kind of combine what we saw last week of the teams with adjustments, how the matchups, games within the game that gives you more than I just think this team will win. Well, anybody can just guess that. We try to tell you how we think it's going to play out, what to look for.
Few NFL games of interest. Tennessee is at Minnesota. It's the Titans, a 3-point favorite in Minneapolis. The 2-0 Bears getting 3.5 points at the Falcons, who desperately need a win. I mean, a loss to the Bears dropped them to 0-3 and in deep trouble. Other game, Houston, a 4-point underdog at Pittsburgh. It's an interesting contest. The Rams, this might be, at least this is my first time to even look at the NFL slate. It's been one of those weeks, Chris. The Rams, a 1.5-point underdog at Buffalo. The Bills have looked good so far in the regular season. Dallas getting 5 points at Seattle. Seattle has looked like a championship caliber team so far. Green Bay is at New Orleans. The Saints coming off of a very disappointing loss on Monday night in Las Vegas. They get the Packers. The Saints a 3-point favorite as of right now. And then the Monday night game, Kansas City is at Baltimore. That's the game of the week. Goodness gracious. Mm-hmm. Probably a preview of the AFC championship game, perhaps. The Chiefs, a 3.5-point underdog at Baltimore. Both of those teams unbeaten. Two or three of those games really stand out. The NFL's been fun to watch for me so far. That Kansas City-Baltimore game, that's must-watch television.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a game of the year thus far, and we may have one or two more that are similar, but you're right. And Baltimore's look better on tape. They're a more complete team, but you got to score enough points to beat Kansas City. Can they do that? They're better at the line of scrimmage. Baltimore's got really two good corners that can maybe take a better handle the outside receivers of the Chiefs. So look for the slot receivers and the tight ends to be an even bigger factor this week for Kansas City. And then Baltimore's running game. I mean, J.K. Dobbins quickly move up. He was their fourth running back, Neil, to start the season, and he's quickly moved up. They've got the deepest group of running backs in the league to Baltimore. Going to be a real interesting matchup. Certainly beware of the desperation teams. You mentioned it. Atlanta at home against Chicago. 0-3 if you're in. There's got an extra team in each conference. But if you go 0-3, you've got 2.7% chance of making the playoffs. So Minnesota at home. Again, desperation game. Tennessee. Beware of that. Now, Houston, I expected to be 0-2. Their record has been tough, and against Pittsburgh, that's tough again. Beware of the desperation teams. There's a difference between the desperation team and the team that's just not good enough. So, curious to see. Buffalo, you mentioned how good they've looked. They have looked good. The Jets, Miami, who looked good on Thursday night against Jacksonville. Blocking the front of those two teams, though, and blocking the front with Aaron Donald, where the Rams are moving him up and down the line of scrimmage, playing the piano, as we like to call it. How well they're able to block that front, that defensive front. The Rams are looking good. We'll begin to tell you, is this Buffalo team really that good? So those kind of headline, and another desperation team is the Eagles at home. They go 0-3, lose to Cincinnati at home. There's few places that get as ugly in the media and in the fan base than Philadelphia, I can tell you. So those kind of lead the headline. Certainly the Saints' backs are against the wall a little bit at home against Green Bay. Dallas has not looked good on the offensive line. They got the win last week against Atlanta, but it's an intriguing week. You know, we break the NFL down into quarters. We always did, coach and scout. So it's the first four, it's the second four, it's the third four, and it's the last four games. And so you always like to say you like to stay ahead of schedule. If you win each quarter, you'll win 3 games, you win 12 games. And you're in good shape. And obviously now the race is going to be for the 1 seed. Remember, you don't get a bye with the 2 seed anymore. It's a 1 seed. So everybody's focused on having the best record in the conference. So it's not too early to begin thinking about it as we head into week 3. It's going to be interesting.
All right, here we go. Time for the Chris Landry picks against the spread in the SEC. If you're driving, pull over, write these down.
Oh, yeah.
If you got your bookie on the phone, put him on hold. All right, here we go. So thankful we get to do this today. Football tomorrow, about 25 hours from this moment. Kickoffs in Oxford, kickoff in Auburn. So here we go. We'll start with those two games. Kentucky getting 8 points at Auburn.
I think Kentucky will keep this close. How about you? I say Auburn wins it, and I think it's a little bit closer. I think it's more of a 4 or 5 point game.
I've got Auburn, and I'll lay the 8.
Oh, there you go.
I'll lay the 8 points. All right, Florida giving 13. I know the lines moved a little bit. For the sake of this, we established the line, so we'll just leave it here. Florida giving 13 at Ole Miss.
I think they're going to score enough points here to cover the 13, even 14. And so I do like Florida here in this one.
I don't like Ole Miss's defense at all from what I hear and what I see. I think Ole Miss scores some points on Saturday, but I think they give up a ton. I like Florida to lay the 13. Mississippi State getting 17 at LSU, so the Tigers minus 17 at home against Mike Leach and the Bulldogs.
This is tough. A little bit tougher. I'm gonna go with LSU, and I'm gonna lay the points. I just need to see Mississippi State a little bit more and how much that Mike's been able to put in, and I think KJ Costello will do a nice job. I just don't know. I think it'll be an LSU 17, 20-point win.
I agree. I think Miles Brennan's going to be good. I don't know if he's going to be Joe Burrow good. I don't know that he has to be Joe Burrow good.
That's correct.
I think he's going to be good. I think LSU wins and covers the 17. I'm with you. I don't think they blow past that number, but I do think they get past that number. Georgia, a 24.5-point favorite at Arkansas. They're in lovely Fayetteville. I'd love it for my daughter for the Hogs to pull off an upset here. She would be excited. I don't think that's going to happen. I like Georgia laying all those points, and I'd probably lay more than that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they compress this game. It won't be explosive, and it will look like they may not cover for 2.5 quarters, and then you'll see by the fourth quarter it'll be a decisive win, I think.
Alabama gives 28.5. It's a huge SEC line. Alabama gives 28.5 at Missouri. Boy, it's a bunch of points, Chris.
Yeah, it is. I just don't have any confidence in Missouri being able to keep it close. And the only thing would be, boy, it's the first game. So you're thinking about Georgia, you're thinking about Alabama, you're thinking about LSU, you're thinking about hey, are they going to be that sharp that first week? Okay, they're going to win, but maybe it's 14 instead of 17 or 17 instead of 20 or what. I think Alabama's going to be pretty sharp, and I don't think Missouri is. I think Alabama rolls, and I think they cover.
Yeah, I picked Alabama to cover too, just a bunch of points, but I did take Alabama minus the 28.5. Tennessee minus 3 at South Carolina, the home team getting a field goal from the folks in Vegas. I don't know why I do this every year. I get on the Will Muschamp bandwagon. He lets me down. It's a repetitive annual thing. For some reason, I think South Carolina is going to win this game, so I'm going to take the points.
Oh, good. It's interesting, and they tend to win a game when you don't expect. I'm going to take the Vols, and I'm going to lay the points. I think they're going to win. In fact, spoiler alert, I go into great detail as to why, but I actually picked this 24-20, so it's right at the line.
Yeah.
That's Tennessee. I think Tennessee wins this on the road. At this point, they just have a little more talent, and I'm going with it. But this is the toughest one, and this is one, if South Carolina wins by 7, I'm not surprised. I don't know what's going to happen. So, hey, buyer beware out there. If you're driving, don't spill your coffee and slow your dial to your bookie.
All right, last one, Vanderbilt getting 29.5 at Texas A&M. It's a hell of a gift. I don't think it's enough of a gift. I like the Aggies, and I'll lay the 29.5. It's a lot of points, but I'll lay them.
Yeah, and I'm a little concerned about this because I just have a feeling that A&M won't be as sharp as they will be. I just have no confidence in Vanderbilt at all. And I just think that they won't need to be as sharp. I'm with you. I'm laying it. I wasn't even sure what the line was. Whatever it is, I'm going to say I just don't see. And that's the thing about it, isn't it? It means it's 29. So they win by 28 comfortably. That is really tough because I think that's kind of about what it is. I see a 24-28 point victory, but I'm going to say that they lay it. I'm going to take the Aggies and lay it. I don't know. That's not I would be weary of that. That's one that A&M is going to win, but that's a lot of points. And unlike Georgia and Alabama, A&M's not quite the hammer down. I could see them winning 24-28 points. Be happy with it. Looks good. Everybody's happy, except the folks out in the desert.
Well, those buildings in Vegas weren't built on credit. They were built with cash.
No. There's a reason. Exactly right.
All right. That was a fun hour. We will be back on Tuesday. We'll recap all of these games. Chris will tell us why it happened and what happens from there. We'll look back at week 1, take a quick look ahead to week 2 on Tuesday, and then we'll be back again next Friday to preview week 2 in the SEC. Enjoy your weekend. It's been 6.5 months of unknown. You get SEC football tomorrow, no matter who you're for. Be safe out there. Here's to good health for all 14 teams. We will be back on Tuesday at 9 a.m. right here to talk about it. For Chris Landry, I'm Neil McCready. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to and watching SEC football and beyond. Take care.